My name's Chris Bunnell in Fairfield, Connecticut. I wanted to talk about something that may not be on the top of mind for a lot of people here. So 2001, Patriot Act went through pretty quickly right afterwards. A lot of people were scared. A lot of people didn't have time to ask questions. They wanted security and they wanted it now, and they wanted it quickly. A couple years later, I guess now 10 years later, the renewal came up. Finally a chance to ask those important questions. Where is that balancing act? Where is that point where we say, that's too far, federal government. We need to have these civil liberties, and it's worth kind of having that balance. And I rise today because I'm very worried that there's a profound disconnect right now between what the American people know and what the American people are having done to them by the federal government. Senator Wyden on the Senate Intelligence Committee, read a quote. When the American people find out how their government has secretly interpreted the Patriot Act, they will be stunned and they will be angry. Okay, and the problem I think extends beyond the Patriot Act. It's a good metaphor for kind of the executive overreach, but if you look to the FBI, they've made the case that they can put a GPS tracker on your car and they don't need a warrant. They were recently, last week, forced to disclose the fact that they have a technology to simulate a cell phone tower. So you pulled out your cell phone earlier tonight. Imagine instead of that cell phone connecting to an AT&T tower, it connected to an FBI van out in the corner. And that every single text message, every phone call, everything you sent to your kids, it went through that FBI van, and we know the technology exists for them to preserve that. They said, don't worry, we'll delete it. The NSA, General Keith Alexander, went before the government, or went before the Intelligence Committee. He was asked very clearly, do you have the capabilities to spy on Americans in this country? And he gave a very legalese kind of worded language. It said, right now, we don't have the technical capabilities, and he wouldn't say no. Now, there have been multiple lawsuits brought by the ACLU, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that have tried to challenge that. Every single one of those lawsuits has been shot down because all of their information that they would need to establish cause was classified at the last minute under executive privilege. We don't have a functional way to claw back these liberties once we give them away. And I know I'm running out of time, but I think the one thing that will maybe most pertinent to people who are watching the news right now is the drone program. Here's another case of the White House, the Department of Defense, and the CIA taking a position that civil liberties and the constitutionally provided liberties fall below that threshold of providing security. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize time here. Yep. So they'll come before you, and they have in years past, and they'll say, if you just give us a little bit more power, we just want to tap this one line, or we just want to have access to this one financial database, just give us a little more power, we'll provide you your security. That doesn't exist. There has to be a balance, and yes. I don't think we're having that discussion today.
Yes.
You raised really good and important points that have become particularly important to me in the last month. I didn't mention this before. Some of you know I sit on the Financial Services Committee in the House. I was recently appointed to the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. So I'm actually up close and personal on a lot of these issues, and I've heard General Alexander talk, but I'm new to it, so I don't want to tell you that I'm an expert on this stuff. But the issues you raise are good issues. I think most people agree, looking at the Patriot Act back in 2001, the Congress was pretty scared. We were all pretty scared. That legislation was written rapidly. I think most people believe that that was a pretty significant overreach, the ability of the government to intrude into your private information. Over time, we've been trying to scale it back. I voted, the first vote I took on the Patriot Act, I voted against it. And by the way, there's other things that we need to look hard at, like the authorization for the use of military force that the Congress gave to the president after that. That is a very broad authorization.
A carte blanche, basically.
Kind of a carte blanche. I wouldn't disagree with that characterization. Right now, let me quickly touch. We've got a big crew here, so let me try to address big issues quickly. I'm deep into CISPA legislation right now. Now, most of the room doesn't know what CISPA legislation is. You do. CISPA is cybersecurity, which would allow the government to share with Opt Online and Comcast and everything malware or attacks that come into the United States with the idea of bringing down networks. It would also, and here's where it gets interesting and complicated, it would allow Comcast, I'm just using them as an example, any internet service provider, to say, we see something suspicious related to cybersecurity, we want to send you this thing for you to look at. That is a scary possibility if there's any chance that that stuff that Comcast sends to the NSA has personally identifiable information on it. Now, I'm in the weeds on this one. I'm learning fast on it, but it is essential that we pass a cybersecurity bill. Sitting on intelligence, it is important that we be able to identify these attacks and counter them. Saudi Aramco lost 30,000 computers to a malicious cyber attack a couple of months ago. It is critical that we protect the private information that you and I have, and I'm working on it now. On drones, Rand Paul made those famous on the floor of the Senate.
It's sad that it took him to do so, but yep, I'm done.
It's a fundamental principle of our Constitution, and I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I believe, that the military cannot operate against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. And I wish the Attorney General had said, when Rand Paul said, can a drone kill an American citizen in the U.S., I wish the Attorney General had come out about 10 seconds later and said, absolutely not. That's not quite the answer he gave. And we need to pull that apart. I will tell you that I have looked in detail at the legal opinions, highly classified legal opinions around the killing of Anwar al-Awlaki in Yemen. As a non-lawyer, I have two thoughts around that. One, this was a very, very dangerous and bad guy. And looking at the facts that the administration that the administration was facing, I don't have a problem with their decision to take him out. I do have a problem with the general concept that the President of the United States, one guy, without judicial oversight, has the right to decide what American citizens abroad in general. There has got to be some oversight of that, and I'm not satisfied yet that that oversight exists. So I'm just opening my thinking to you because, again, on the al-Awlaki case, this was a very bad guy, and I'm glad he's no longer with us. But I don't think many of us are comfortable with the idea that a president, without meaningful judicial or legislative oversight, can keep a list like that and take lethal action against U.S. citizens. It's a very uncomfortable thought. I'm still working through how we can provide some kind of check and balance against that sort of power.